Hello, welcome to episode 2 of PhRobyn with your hosts Robyn and Phil. Hello. Today we're doing a slightly different, a contrast to what we last did, which was about hiking. Today we're going to do about workplace toxicity, and we're going to do it over 2 episodes. So we're just going to do an A to Z of toxic traits. Obviously we're not going to get all of them. Today we'll be doing A to M, and then next episode we'll do N to Z. Examples shared are fictionalised and generalised, and they're not tied to any specific company, individual or event. They're just purely educational. Okay, so let's kick off then with A. So we've got assumptions down for A. So what you might find in a workplace is the decision makers are making their decisions based on assumptions, but that what they're not taking into consideration is the impact that that might have further down the line. So an example of that I can only kind of think of is, let's say for example, I was talking about wildlife in the garden, right? So I say, I'm pretty sure that there's a hedgehog coming in the garden. I make the team build a hedgehog house, and then it turns out to be a completely different animal, because I've assumed there's a hedgehog without knowing by facts there's actually a completely different animal coming in. So then that team's built a product that's not fit for purpose.
Yeah, I think making assumptions just wastes time, doesn't it? It's because you end up you need to have the whole facts before you start working on something. So if you don't have the whole facts, and you don't know if you're building the right thing, or if what you're building is fit for purpose. And that's just to say, like, assumptions made about building something. It could be assumptions about a person or anything like that.
Yeah, so basically get facts straight before you make a decision, or before you say stuff about others. We also have accountability. So it kind of ties in with assumptions, because if you make a decision based on an assumption and it's the wrong one, and then instead of being accountable for that decision that you've made, you may feel it easier to kind of point fingers or place the blame on others. So it's always really important to make sure that everybody owns up to their mistakes, and if you're a leader of a team, for example, then being accountable for that team as well, and not throwing them under the bus.
Yeah, I think it's you never want to do like a blame game. You never want to find out who you can blame. It's always what you can learn from something, and that starts at the top level, doesn't it? Like accountability. If you start blaming others, then they're going to start wanting to blame other people as well, and that it creates like a culture, like a negative culture. Like everyone's trying to blame someone else. Whereas if you say, look, a mistake happened, but we're going to learn from it and figure out how to not do it again, then they're gonna see that and then try to hopefully emulate that in their careers as well.
Yeah. So I think accountability isn't actually a toxic trait, but it's actually a green flag trait, and it's not being accountable that's the toxic trait there. So for B then, we've got bullying. So that does happen in a workplace, and I think for bullying it's really hard to prove. If it's one versus another, it's really difficult to prove. So it's all about being, I guess, vigilant and looking out for your peers in a workplace. If you notice that going on, then it's important to kind of raise it with either your direct line or someone that you trust in the company, or even the HR team.
Yeah, and also raise it. You don't have to raise it with HR if you're confident enough. You can raise it with the person themselves, but I think it's important to raise it as soon as possible.
Don't let it go on. Yeah. If you speculate bullying going on, obviously don't throw, like we said before, assumptions around assuming that somebody's being bullied. Make sure you get your facts straight before you say this is bullying, but ensure that you've also got evidence as well to back up your points, because a bully will always try and fight back. We've also got belittling. So again, I guess that just ties into the bullying trait. So you could see somebody belittling somebody else. And basically, don't put your head in the sand. If you see it going on, do speak up, either to that person or, like you said, to your line manager or somebody even higher.
Yeah, because like belittling someone's never gonna end well. Like, there's no purpose to it. Like, you're just gonna make the other person feel like crap.
Yeah.
And that's gonna. You think like if you belittle someone, you might motivate them to do better, but you're not. You're just making them feel like crap, and it's going to show in their work.
Yeah, exactly. Like if it's a like constructive criticism and there's belittling somebody for, like, I'm making a mistake, for example, and it's like a thin line almost, and you've got to know the difference between the two to approach that team member if you need to provide constructive criticism on something. Cool. So that's be done, unless you wanted to add anything else.
No. No, nothing talking about.
Cool. So for C then we have cliques. So sometimes in a workplace, obviously you have friendships, but it's really important to, again, it's a thin line, but it's important to know the difference between a friendship and a clique, because they are completely different things. You obviously get friendships within a workplace. You're not friends with everybody, but you do get friendship groups, and that's completely okay. But it's when that friendship group then turns into more of a clique and they kind of act against everybody else.
It's like exclusionary, isn't it?
Yeah, it ties into bullying a little bit, because you kind of go into your little group and kind of bully everybody else or do stuff to kind of hurt them.
Yeah, it's kind of like a "you're not allowed to be in our group" type thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, nobody else can be friends with us because we're X. And you may find some people get entitled if they're in that clique, and that would obviously cause friction within the environment.
And I suppose as well, like if you're in that kind of group as well, it's kind of like an echo chamber. So like you're only listening to people in that group, and if they're all saying the same thing, you're not going to get another point of view. So like if like the idea of something in your group is wrong and you're all saying it's right, then you're going to believe it's right. But without hearing someone from outside, then you're not going to have that differing point of view, or maybe like the right way to do it, or whatever.
I guess it's really hard to kind of combat a clique or to advise on how we would go around. Like if we were running a workplace and we saw a clique, how would we approach kind of dissolving that? Would we talk to the members of the clique, or would we try and highlight it somehow? What would we do?
Yeah, I think it's also a good thing to mention as well that telling someone they're on a clique when they're not is also it can also have negative outcomes.
Yeah, it's like an assumption. Like, it ties back into assumption. If you're assuming that they're a clique, you need to get facts straight before you kind of say that's a clique there, and always get evidence to back up your point, because otherwise it just becomes like a them versus you, whatever you want to call it. It just adds to the toxicity.
Yeah, a lot of ways to prevent all this kind of these red flags is with facts and evidence, and making sure you can back up claim. If you just tell someone you're on a clique and not, or like you make an assumption that's completely wrong, then it's always going to end badly. If you've got the facts and evidence to back that up, then mention at the time. Don't just mention, oh yeah. Just don't make an assumption and then not follow through with showing the facts to say this is how I've noticed it, and I think you should change or whatever. But yeah.
And I think being inclusive all the time, so make sure that everybody feels included. Like workplace socials, for example, they happen, but if, say, a workplace social happened and it was just X amount of people that went, then you would speculate on that clique. But if everybody was involved, then that's kind of negating that clique accusation then, because everybody's there. And obviously doesn't if you're in a workplace social, for example, like a bar, don't hide in the corner with your clique. Let everybody get involved, chat to everybody, because you might surprise yourself and they might actually be someone you relate to and could build friendships with. So for C, we've also got credit stealing. So this is kind of, well, it happens if it's like praising the good, but then belittling the bad. But you kind of take credit for the good, and instead of taking credit for the bad as well, like taking accountability, you just point fingers instead. So it kind of ties in with A as well. If somebody has done a good job, praise them for it, and don't sit on your high horse. Yeah.
Yeah, because again, credit stealing is going to be one of those things that hurts morale in the team as well. So like, why would you continue to keep making such a massive effort if someone else is just going to take all the credit and get all the reward for it?
Yeah. Let's say if you build a house, for example, there's a lot of different tradespeople involved. And at the end of it, if you go, I built that house, instead of accrediting everybody who was involved in each part, then that's obviously going to take morale down in that team. And you might find that when you build another house, that team might not want to help you anymore because you've taken all that credit.
I think another thing to recognise as well is that credit stealing doesn't work, like depending on your position. So like, just say you're a developer in a company and you've got a line manager who's like your team manager or whatever. If the team manager's stealing credit for building a feature that the developer wrote, then that's not, the team manager isn't responsible for building a feature. They're responsible for making sure that feature gets built by delegating the work to the people, like the developers. So by stealing credit, you're not actually making yourself look better. As a team leader, you would look better if you could show that your team were handling everything that could be thrown at them. If you're having to take on their work to make yourself look better, then you're kind of failing as a lead.
Yeah, it kind of ties in with inclusivity as well, because if you're taking the credit, that's isolating that credit to yourself only. But if you're including everybody, then that boosts team morale because they all feel involved, they all feel part of the end product. Yeah, so that's credit stealing. And I guess there's no way to really combat that unless you speak up and say, actually, I was involved in that as well. And then that gets recognised, then that actually it was a team effort, and then you all get credited for it. If somebody else is saying, it was me, and nobody else talks, they're never going to know it was everybody else that was involved in that. Okay, so for D, it kind of ties in with bullying, but it's discrimination. We won't go too far into this because there's many types of discrimination. But we would recommend if you see it around the workplace, raise it as soon as you can, because it should never happen in any workplace, discrimination of any form. You're there to do a job and you're not there to be discriminated against.
I think that's a team effort as well. Like, it shouldn't just fall on the person being discriminated against to speak up. It's literally anyone in your team or company that sees it. They have a responsibility to like mention it to someone and nip it in the bud.
Yeah, so looking after your peers whilst you're in the workplace, regardless of, your friendship status with that person, if you're seeing discrimination happen, regardless of if you're friends with that person or not, you have seen that discrimination and you should report it. Cool, so for E, we've kind of covered a bit, it's exclusion. Everybody needs to feel involved in a workplace. If you're a team, or part of a team, or a team leader, you should never exclude the team because they will just feel like they're just sat on the outside looking in, and they'll never feel credited for for their job, and it hits morale really low.
Especially like if, just say you're leading an IT team. By excluding a developer or developers, you're losing out on past experience. They've only probably been with your company for like a couple of years, but they've probably been in the career, like in the industry for 10, 15 years or so, like that. By excluding them, you're missing out on 15 years of experience for one person.
Yeah.
Like, not only are you making them feel pretty crappy by not being included, you're also losing out on like potentially a lot of experience, or like asking the right questions.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good to get different minds on different points of view for things, because if you're just going in one direction, you might find that actually that direction is again based on assumption. You might have someone in the team that might say, hang on a minute, what about doing it this way? Or what would the user or the client think if we did it this way? And it's always good to have those kind of discussions, because it also makes that person feel listened to. Even if the overarching decision is no, we're not going to go with what you've suggested, at least you feel heard, and at least you feel involved. And then when that end product comes around, you'll remember that meeting that you were involved in when you're like designing, for example, and you'll be like, yeah, that was like my product. I was involved in the team when we did that, and it makes you feel proud. Cool. So then we have F, which is false accusations, which again ties into assumptions. If you're assuming something, that's going to lead to a false accusation against somebody else. And it's all about getting your facts straight before you open your mouth, or before you write that email, before you write that message even. And just make sure, yeah, you got facts before you accuse.
Yeah.
All it does is make that other person feel like they then need to defend themselves, and then that just creates a rift. So there's no point in going there. Just make sure you got evidence, and if you're that person being accused, try and find evidence to fire back at them and just protect yourself. So G, we have gossiping, which kind of comes from cliques that form in a toxic environment. And again, it's all about assumptions and getting facts correct. If people are gossiping about an individual and you notice it and you know it's not true, again, speak up, correct them, and nip it in the bud. And if you're that person speculating about something, don't talk about it to somebody else. Talk to the person you're speculating about. Get your facts straight, and that will basically nip it straight in the bud, and the gossiping won't happen.
Also, like gossiping, like it's easy when you're gossiping to make assumptions, or like not have all those facts, because you're speaking about something that might not have happened. You're just saying what you've heard or whatever, and it's
yeah. And to me, I think there's like, wow, it would be lovely to have zero gossip in a workplace. For me, there's two types of gossip. There's like green flag gossip, which everybody's involved with and finds it funny, or like goes along with it and it doesn't hurt anybody. And then there's it's not personal, no, it's just like banter, office banter or workplace banter. And then you've got red flag gossip, which actually goes out to intend to hurt people, and that should never happen in a workplace, because you might not know that person. You're literally just speculating and then passing that speculation on to somebody else, and then that causes gossip around a workplace, and then that person that you're speculating about finds out, and it will hurt them. We then have gaslighting. So good example of this would be if you're in a meeting with an individual, and then a few weeks later you try and recap what happened in that meeting, and they're changing the truth of what happened in that meeting, or even just a conversation that you've had, and they're moving it around and making you question like your truth, or what your recall the memory as. I think the best way to protect yourself against that is record meetings and document them.
Have someone in there that can take notes, or
yeah, have a third party in there that can take notes, record and do I like doing not an agenda, it's a minutes, isn't it, when you finish a meeting, and have minutes, and then get that person to sign off that everything that was agreed, so that everybody is on the same everybody's on the same wavelength.
Yeah, I think it's important to make sure that everyone sees it after the meeting as well, because people do miss things. It's easy to miss something if you're distracted for a second.
Yeah, and
having that opportunity to review it afterwards just gives you that extra minute or so to say, actually, no, we mentioned this as well.
Yeah, and if something is decided in that meeting and it impacts others, let the others know what's changed or what's going to change or what's discussed. Obviously, you don't have to go through the whole meeting, but it's just the stuff that impacts others that they might need to be aware of. Make sure that happens, because you could end up in hot water if X thinks one way and Y thinks another way. So yeah, that's gaslighting. H, we have harassment. Again, we won't go too in depth with this one, like discrimination, but if you notice it happening, raise it. And there's many different types of harassment as well, so we're not going too far into it, but protect your peers. Hypocrisy. So this one, again, is really difficult to prove, and I guess the only way to prove it is through documentation and writing up what's been said, what's been agreed, because if it's a bit like gaslighting, a few weeks down the line they might go back on what they've said, or for you they might say don't do that, but for others they might say that's completely okay, you need to pick them up on it, because it's just confusing. It will cause confusion in a team if half of them are allowed to do something, half of them aren't allowed to do something.
And sometimes it can be even just random, so they might just make a decision then for one meeting, oh no, you can't do that. But then previous meetings and future meetings, you might say, oh yeah, you can do that.
And it just causes confusion. And
you've got to be consistent. You can't just pick and choose when you want to apply a process or a rule or whatever it is. Yeah.
And if you're changing processes or changing rules, make sure everybody is aware of what's changing. Because if you're all on the same page, then you won't get, but hang on a minute, the other day you said this, or it was okay for me to do that the other day, now it's not. What's going on? And it will just negate that confusion.
Yeah, it also kind of leads to another scenario or situation where you can have different. It can lead to different groups within your team. If you're trying to get two groups together, just say you have the IT team, for example, and the rest of the business, by saying some people can do one thing but others can't, that's going to cause a barrier between those two different teams.
Yeah, you kind of create a faction within your own team, and obviously is going to be a rift, and you're going to you're butting a team within a team against one another. That's not how it should be. If you're working in a team, you are one. You should all look out for one another, and you should all be working the same way. For I, we have isolation, and I guess isolation is kind of it's not a toxic trait in itself, but it's an impact of toxicity. If an individual is being bullied, excluded, they feel like they're on their own against a clique, or discriminated against, or harassed even, that individual is going to feel very, very isolated. And especially if their peers aren't speaking up on their behalf as well, or they're seeing this bad behaviour happen but not saying anything about it, that individual is going to feel even more on their own.
And that just leaves them it can impact their mental health as well.
Yeah, it's going to have an impact on their mental health. They're not going to want to get up and go to work each morning, and you might even lose a good colleague someone who's really good at their job because they've been isolated to the point where they feel like they can't do this anymore, and they might leave. Okay, for J, we have just doing their job. So this is kind of like another impact of a toxic environment. You might, when you go to work, you have a passion, right? And you go to work and your passion is delivered within your work. And if someone's feeling like isolated or like they don't want to be there, that's going to have an impact on their work, and that's going to dim their light or their passion. So it will become something that they actually care about, and it will turn into I'm just here because it's my job, and that obviously will impact their morale. We work to live, we don't live to work. And if you're finding yourself living to work, then maybe zoom out and think, why am I living to work? And what can I do to flip it so that I'm working to live?
Yeah, and if you create like that bad environment, they're just going to want to just do their job. Like, I think there's a term for it, quiet quitting, where you just literally do the minimum you have to do.
Yeah.
And that's not the kind of team you want to. Well, it's not the kind of individuals you want to have in your team. You want them to want to be the best they can be.
You want them to have fire in their belly and be like, come on, let's do this, let's produce something amazing. And if that gets dampened down because of the environment, you're going to lose some good people, and the work that comes out of them is going to be less, because they're just going to be turning up to do their job, like you said, at the bare minimum. Alright, so for K, we have kick staff while they're down. So if you are an individual and you are feeling down and you go to a peer or you go to your manager, and instead of giving you support, they say, well, I'm not surprised because you've been working really poorly at the minute. That's not going to help anybody. It's your responsibility to support that person regardless of how you feel about them. And if you want to improve their performance, or if they're not working in a certain way that you want to improve, that should be dealt with in a sensitive manner in a different time.
Yeah, it's like, again, it's good. It's going back to a previous point where you're trying to put blame on someone, isn't it? It's like by saying that it's not surprised they're not doing a good job or whatever, you're not helping them. You're just going to make them feel even crappier.
Yeah, and everybody should feel supported in a workplace, regardless of their performance or how they're doing in a job. They should always feel supported by their peers and or managers. So L is lying, and again it ties into a lot of the ones that we've covered, like false accusations and gossiping. If somebody is downright lying about you, it's very important to make sure you've got the facts and the evidence to say that's not true and here's why.
Again, it's not going to help anyone, is it, in your team? By lying, you just not giving anyone reason to trust you. It's like if you're lying about one thing, you could be lying about something else, and it's like the next time you go to say to someone, "Oh, yeah, you've got a good pay rise coming," or something like that. Why would they believe you? Or if you do this extra work, if you do this overtime, it's going to look good for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to cause a mistrust within the team if you've got a compulsive liar, and why should they trust you? And it could make people close down. Like if you're trying to have an open conversation with them, and the other person might be sat there thinking, how much of this is the truth? And you're not going to really be engaging in that conversation. So then that causes more friction. Cool. And our final one for part 1 is M, and that is micromanaging. So there's, again, it's a thin line between having control of a team and mistrust in a team. It's obviously important to oversee what's going on. It's important to be involved where you need to be involved. But trust is so, so important, and to trust somebody to do their job is so important because that boosts them as well. If they feel trusted, they are going to probably give 100%, if not more, effort because they know that they feel trusted in that job.
Yeah. If I've been working in the industry for like 15, 20 years or whatever like that, I expect to be trusted to be able to do my job. I don't expect someone else to come in and say, oh yeah, you should be doing it this way because I've done it before this way and it's better. It's like, it might have been better for you in the past as like in that specific instance, but like just because it was better then, it doesn't mean it's better now. There might be reasons why you're not doing it that way, and by micromanaging and telling someone to do it a certain way, you're just ignoring that experience. Again, it goes back to ignoring the experience and exclusion.
Yeah, if you're not listening to others' opinions on things or trying to actively understand why things are done a certain way that might be different to a way that you're trying to do it, then that's again going to cause toxicity because that individual that is not going to feel listened to. So you've got one person with obviously like tunnel vision, this is the way I want to do it, that's absolutely fine. But if you're excluding people on the way or deciding not to listen to people on the way, that's when the friction comes in. You just got to be more communicative and you got to try and understand if somebody's saying, actually, no, that's not, I don't agree with your tunnel vision, listen to them because they might have a point. And it's just all about communication and engaging with that person and trying to understand their point of view, them trying to understand your point of view, and just come into a compromise on how you can move forward.
Yeah, also micromanaging is not going to make yourself look any better either. So like, if you're having to micromanage someone, then it shows you're not doing your job very well. If you're having to do their job for them, like you haven't built that environment, or you've not created that culture, or you've not trained that person up well enough to be able to handle their tasks by themselves, and that's not going to look good on like the person doing the micromanaging.
Yeah, and as well, it probably gives you more stress if you're micromanaging. So say you could have a team of like 50 people, and they could have their like sub teams as an example, and you're doing your own job plus those sub teams' jobs. You're just going to drive yourself into the floor because you're just going to get burnt out. It's just going to drive you crazy trying to keep on top of everybody's jobs. Like, having oversight and catching up with the team is totally different to like being a helicopter and being right on them every minute of every day.
Yeah, let your team create an environment where your team feel comfortable coming to you for advice. Don't force your advice on them. It's one of those things where the opposite is a green flag, but the micromanaging itself is a red flag. You want people in your team to feel comfortable asking you for help when they need it. If they don't ask for your help, then they don't need it and they know what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I think that's going to conclude part 1 of our workplace toxicity episode. Just want to reiterate the examples that we've used are based on patterns across workplaces everywhere and are not tied to any specific company, individual or event. And we will pick up part 2 another day. But for now, thanks for listening and I'll see you next time. Bye.